Hello, I'm Carlos Grace.
And I'm Isaac Cinnamon, and we're Christians in Cinema.
When I wake up in my own pink world.
And today, we are going through the Barbie movie. Barbie.
Directed by Greta Gerwig.
Hey, Barbie!
Hey, Barbie!
Hi, Ken.
Okay. Directed by Greta Gerwig, written by Greta Gerwig and her partner, Noah Baumbach.
Yes. How we kind of want to go through this is we want to go through some older films. I say older. Lord of the Rings came out
early 2000s.
But we want to bounce between
classics and then
older stuff and then
stuff.
what's popping now? What's happening?
What's popping?
And I guess Barbie, has been out for a while now, but I think it's still pretty relevant, pretty big. Yeah. Let's see. Oscars were a couple months ago. I know that was a big thing with Barbie. There was a lot of controversy.
Yeah. It won Best Song,
yes.
right? What else? Did it win anything else?
I think it just won Best Song.
And then it was nominated for...
It was nominated for Best Actor or Supporting Actor.
For Gosling.
For Ken. And then Best Supporting Actress for
America.
Mm-hmm. And then people were conflicted over Margot and Greta not getting it. But Greta kind of came out and said, look, people keep saying I didn't get nominated, but I did. My movie is nominated for Best Picture.
Yeah.
So, say what you will about the Oscars.
Sure.
I think
it's all political and subjective.
And money and old white men.
Academy. Yeah.
The Academy. But anyway, it's relevant. We had the big Barbenheimer thing.
Barbenheimer. Ooh, we survived it, guys.
We survived Barbenheimer. I actually did do that.
Did you?
I watched
same
Barbie
day?
And Oppenheimer the same day.
I heard there's this joke going around hey, we're gonna drop off the kids at Oppenheimer so the adults can go see Barbie, which don't do for either of them.
That's
don't
so
drop
funny.
Your kids off.
That's so funny. Yeah. I guess before we jump into it, we should say and kind of preface, first of all, spoilers, if you somehow haven't seen Barbie. We recognize that we are two men reviewing Barbie.
Hello.
And we think that, we want to talk about that, right?
Yeah.
And kind of how we saw it versus how women saw it. But we know that this movie is very, has a lot to say on gender roles in general. Yeah. And so preparing for this episode, we were we want to get a women's voice on this. So,
right. We talked about this.
We know how we feel, our perspective, but I think really for this especially, it matters almost a lot more. How the women of the world received this movie.
Right.
So we will have a part in this episode where I've reached out to some women in our life, a close family and friends, and we're just going to kind of hear their perspective on it too. It might align with some things we say, it might not. We just want to hear it all.
Yeah. Please have an open heart and be patient with us.
Yeah.
We may know that this might not be your opinions or your perspective on it.
Yeah.
Just know we're not being definitive on everything. We're just kind of going to talk about it because we think it should be.
We're having a conversation and we're presenting it in front of God and saying, God, what do you have to say about this? Because I think I think we both agree that there are some things in this movie that are really good, really great messages, and then there are some things in this movie that might be taking the wrong approach from it. But that's what we're here to talk about. I think, bottom line, there's a lot of truth about the world we live in this movie.
Yeah. There's a lot of. It's not really nuances. It's kind of shown, but it talks about something that's I think been on the hearts of women probably for a very, very long time. I mean, it's the sense of the patriarchy, right? And how men rule the world in a sense, right?
I think this movie shocked a lot of people.
Sure.
Because whether you like it or not, I don't think anyone was really expecting what it was going to turn out to be.
Yeah.
You think the Barbie movie starring Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling, I didn't think that it would be kind of
a sort of
what it turned out to be.
Statement almost.
Yeah. It is. Yeah.
It's a strange one.
This is a strange one.
It's like hard to categorize, which maybe is good.
I don't know. While we were watching it again, at one point I said, "This is like if Wes Anderson did a movie but that was like I originally said that was good. I haven't seen many Wes Anderson movies, so I need to hold my tongue on that.
Yeah.
But that was like engaging for kids.
Yeah. It's you think Barbie and you think kids are gonna enjoy this movie. It's not really a kids' film.
It doesn't feel like a kids' film.
I think it starts off possibly being a kids' film.
It's in this like strange, fantastical world where we have fake Barbie land, which is supposed to be like almost like a perfect but like a mirror of the real world.
Right, almost like an opposite in a sense.
Yeah, what if the roles were reversed? But also it's still in the realm of like Barbie and toys, and so you have that like that skin on it.
Right, you have that kind of kids feeling.
Yeah, and so you have these really goofy like wacky decisions and like weird like Michael Cera moments, but then you also have these really like deep and like the dark feelings and different stuff. So it's an interesting duality.
Yeah, and I think on some level it might be on purpose because maybe Greta wants to kind of surprise us and kind of like pull the carpet from under us. I think it works in some ways, and in some ways I don't think it works very well.
I will say something I noticed is this film is one of the most successful that I've ever seen that has like such a strong agenda. Like I think when I watch any movie, like when I watch Christian movies, non-Christian movies, anything, like
there's always some
no matter what the message is, if it's being like preached at me, if it's telling me like this is how you should feel, like I don't really like it. Like we've kind of talked about this as like a lot of the struggle in Christian movies is it doesn't try to tell a story, it tries to be a sermon.
Kind of a bit preachy.
Yeah, and that just immediately like kind of riles people up with anything. But this is like a really rare occasion where I don't know, I think it almost gets away with it, with like pairing it with a lot of like goofy moments and just a really unique story, I guess. I don't know, but it definitely has like a really like strong agenda and a lot of things to say.
Yeah, it has a lot. This is one of the reasons it's weird is because it tackles a lot of issues, but it's also a parody of a children's toy that has its own controversy in the realm of how we're representing women, and so it's just like this whole pile of stuff it wants to talk about, and I think.
Yeah.
I think it struggles to manage everything all in this just almost 2-hour film.
Yeah. I don't know why, and in a lot of ways it feels like it's critiquing a lot of things. Yeah. Right. I think it's critiquing. I mean, the patriarchy, men in general. It's critiquing Barbie absolutely because you have the whole scene with the daughter, Barbie, and the other middle schoolers are like, get her, and it's this feels almost like, okay, so we're critiquing men, we're critiquing Barbie, but which is also kind of critiquing men in a way because we established that Barbie is kind of run by men.
Mattel is like this whole group of men.
And I think in general, it's like, it's kind of like very bitter against like just the way the world is. It's a very like almost somber tone.
Yeah. In its amazing color scheme of a film, it definitely feels. I feel like you come out of it a bit like there is some resolution, but I think it gives you a bitter taste in some senses, in some ways, and it feels maybe not totally true to everything, if that makes sense. Yeah. I know, and we're gonna get into that as well. We're not leaving that a blanket statement, but
So, I mean, let's get into the main thing. Like this movie goes in hard on like gender roles and what that looks like, what patriarchy is, how women are treated in the real world versus in Barbie land. Yeah. And I think a good place for us to start with like this podcast is to kind of talk about what God says about the different gender roles, and I think it's kind of a tricky topic because people think that, or people have used the Bible to push women down a lot.
Yeah, and or lift men up.
But I think if you read the Bible and you hear what Jesus is saying, like, I think it's the exact opposite.
Yeah.
And I really want to dive into that a little bit.
And it's also the fact of not taking it out of context. I think a lot of people, it's like, oh, they read a verse and it's like, oh, wow, I can, it's like, this is bad. But then you have to read the whole thing.
Yeah.
You know?
The verse you bring up a lot of times, or that can often be used to in a very negative light, is like, wives submit to your husbands or something like that. But then you always, you talk with me and you pair it with the other half of that verse.
Which is right after, which is the husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. And how did Christ love the church? He died for it.
Christ literally died for the church. So, the Bible's saying wives submit to your husbands, and then it's saying husbands die for your wives.
Yeah. So it's this interesting thing, because when it says submit to your husbands, it doesn't mean submit to any old guy, right? They're talking about godly men, right? They're not talking about just like, just any
men
person, Yeah. And submission doesn't necessarily mean I have no voice, I have no opinion, I have no say. It's just more of like the guy is almost like in the leadership role. But to be in a leadership role, what does the president have? He has a cabinet, right? And it's not because the wife isn't good at doing things, right? It's just that there's a sense that God has put men in this sort of role.
The Bible, for when it was written, its inclusion of women is super radical. Like how the writers of the Bible, like for their time, like they're writing genealogies and they're adding women into their genealogies. Like that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times we get in our heads of what leadership looks like.
Sure.
I think of stories like Esther, right? You look at this young woman who, I mean, quite frankly, has been like ripped from the life she knows, but she's able to use the position she's in to save her people.
Her people, yeah. And she has that choice too.
Yeah, and just the multitude of ways the Bible uses women. I mean, you have just the high honor of like the Virgin Mary.
Sure.
You have Jesus' followers, like you think of the 12 disciples, but we miss the fact that there is
there's
so
a group
many
of women
a
that
group
follow
of women
Jesus as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, the main one that everyone knows is Mary Magdalene.
Mary Magdalene.
Which there's been controversy, especially in the Catholic Church, about what her role was, and was she a prostitute? Was she this or that? The Bible never talks about what she was. It just says that Jesus casted 7 demons out of her, and that she and another group of, I think it seems maybe wealthy women, followed Jesus and actually helped fund his ministry. It seems. Yeah. Which is cool.
Yeah. It's so cool, and a lot of how I think about how it works. It's really hard for us to put it in our brains, but it's kind of the way the Trinity works, as far as roles go.
Yeah.
We have that God made man and woman in the beginning, and within the Trinity you have the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Yeah. Somehow, all three are God. They're all one. They're all one, but they're all equally, individually God. But all three of these are different roles. They have different jobs. You know, the Father is like the Lord of all creation. He
creates what we know as the earth, right?
You have Jesus, the Son, who comes down to earth, who takes the form of a human, submits himself to the Father, and sacrifices everything. And even though he's submitting himself by becoming human, Jesus is no less powerful or equal, and the Spirit who lives within us. Like all three of these are all equally God. And so when I think about men and women and the roles we're given, the Bible makes it clear that men are made to be leaders, leaders in the home, leaders in the church. Yeah. I think we're actually kind of going through an epidemic where you see more and more men who aren't taking up leadership roles in their life, who are letting it go to waste. But within, you know, whether it's on a high level or a small family level, like we're meant to lead our families, the people around us. And you have this role of women, and it's like Adam and Eve are like they're cut from the same cloth.
They're made at the same time. Well, pretty close to each other.
I mean, we don't know, but like because of how men have taken advantage of this, you know, we're given power, and we go hungry with it. And so throughout our history, we have pushed others down. We've put anyone who doesn't look or think like us, or we see as weaker, down. But that's not what the Bible teaches at all. It teaches us to lift them up. That the mark of a true leader is to serve. Look at Jesus. Jesus came, and he didn't come commanding orders, and he didn't come to be served. He came to serve. He washed other people's feet. And
the verse is, the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve. I mean, this is the God who comes from his eternal throne and comes to a cradle in the dirt. And he shows us that the greatest sign of power and of leadership is serving other people. And so when he calls men to be leaders, he doesn't call them to look down upon people and just tell them what to do. It's just like God. God doesn't just look down on us and tell us what to do. He goes with us on this journey, and he even serves us. You know what I mean? That's what he does with his disciples and with the people around him.
And just like we have a duty to others, like that's also a duty. It's different, but it's called upon women to others. We all have our own individual walks with God. We're not living solely for women. Women aren't living solely for men. We're all serving each other. Is what we're called to do. Unfortunately, the reality of the world is that it's broken, and that people have taken advantage of that. Men have taken advantage of that. Women have taken advantage of that. Unfortunately, women have had much less say, much less power
for a long time.
And so I think that's a lot of what this movie tries to tackle.
But
going into this, just know that the role of men and women, like God calls everyone. You know, I don't even want to say like the phrase like the role of women is so important, because it kind of implies that like men are at the forefront, but women, you're important too. It's like, no, we're all individually called. We have different jobs, we have different callings, just like I have a different calling than you know, some other guys I know back home.
Like not everyone is meant to be a pastor. Like it's not just because you're a guy. It's like, you know, I'm going to be the president, or I'm going to be the pastor of the church or whatever. I know plenty of guys who are just the youth pastors, right? They just deal with the children or the teenagers or whatnot. And women do the same too. They do a lot of ministry in other parts
and
as well.
I know plenty. I know strong women who like are great leaders as well.
Especially I think of like my mom, even, you know, I go to her for spiritual counsel a lot.
I see how she leads, and the dynamic of like the household. And
there's a powerfulness and a presence there that can't be matched in a sense. You know, I don't know what I'd do without my mom, to be honest.
Absolutely. So having said that, let's get back into Barbie. But it's important to know that going in, because Barbie, I think, really tries to approach that, to approach how the world treats women and just treats each other in general. It is difficult because it feels like it's trying to cover a lot of bases.
I think it seems like they're trying to show both sides. Especially with Ken's arc of like not needing Barbie, which we do agree with. You know, a relationship doesn't define you, except, you know, we believe that the relationship with God is what defines you. Because God never changes. He's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And so if you put your identity on something temporal, like a relationship or a career or you know, even a sexual status, it's gonna fade, right? Because it's temporary, and if it constantly is moving and you're changing and you're not steady. So when the wind and the storms come, you gotta have solid ground, and that solid ground is God.
There's a lot of good in what you just said there. That was one of my, from my perspective, that was one of the things that resonated most with me about the movie, because I know so many guys like this, and I know that I can feel like this often. of this feeling of, you complete me. Like,
Sure.
I'm incomplete without a partner or a relationship.
Right, yeah.
And I think that's something this movie does really well, where Ken is like, where's the quote? I did write it down. He says, "I only exist within the warmth of your gaze." And when in reality, it's Barbie and it's Ken. It's not, it can be a just Ken. And looking at it from the biblical perspective, it's like you find your fullness in God, not in a relationship,
Right.
not in your sexuality or your
Career
or
your
whatever.
family even.
Yeah, that's a really great thing that I took from the movie whether it's men or women. This can apply a lot to men. It applies to women too, who we all feel like if I just had the person,
Yeah.
things would be right. I'd be full.
Yeah.
When in reality, that person is Jesus Christ, and he's
everything.
We have him all the time.
Yeah. He fills
if
our
we accept
voids.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a hard lesson, because I know I deal with that too. Of like,
So do I. Yeah.
I really, I want to start a family someday. I have a desire to have a wife and kids, and so that can often be a thing of like, God, if I just had this, I want this.
Yeah.
When sometimes I need to sit where I am and be like, I am complete with God, Maybe that's something for the future, but right now He's called me right to where I am in the relationship status I have, and my singleness, He's able to use that.
Yeah, and we went to a sermon 2 weeks ago where the pastor talked about how singleness is a blessing and it's honorable in the Bible. I mean, Paul, the guy who wrote most of the New Testament, is single.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and he says, he's like, if you don't have a desire to get married, don't get married. Do the work of the Lord, He says, obviously it's great to get married, but we see that marriage is not needed for a fulfilling life. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it can be a great blessing.
That's the key.
Right.
It's like, both in marriage and in singleness, great works can happen, but it's not, and this is something the church really has struggled with in the past too, is making the perception that if you're not married or not heading that way, then
is there something wrong with
God
you?
can't use
Right.
that. It's the opposite.
I mean, Paul literally says, "Don't get married." If you don't have the desire, don't get married, because there's things to be done in this world, and it's I don't know. I think it was refreshing to hear that, and it's true, and it's true, and it speaks to so many levels. It's honorable as well. Steward your singleness in a way that will glorify God.
Yeah, I love that about this movie. I do really, really like that point. The movie kind of starts off, and it's an interesting, the mantra of Barbie in general is that Barbie can be anything, which I think is, it can be a good thing, especially for women, I think, who are told that they have to fit in a box. But
we see constantly that if you put anything in a box, it's going to come out, because it can't stay there, or it was never in there in the first place, because you can't do that. And I think it's kind of what the Pharisees do with God. It's like, oh, Jesus can't be the Messiah. This guy, all right, come on, the guy from Nazareth. Are you kidding me? That little disgusting place. You know what I mean? And I think we can do that with people and with God. Is we put them in this box and we think they can't get out of it. And I remember doing that with people and being thoroughly surprised by when people did certain actions. I'm like, wow, that's pretty honorable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, that can be a thing too, where we're like, no, yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
He agrees.
Just some side notes. Some things I really do love about this movie. I think it's got a great soundtrack. Just banger after banger, lots of bops. And I think the production design is really cool.
Production design, the costume design as well.
Yeah,
it's all great.
It's stylistically, it's really great.
Yeah.
We talked about how there's a lot of funny moments paired with serious moments. This is another really good message I think that this movie tells is this illusion of perfection.
Sure.
And you have the fact that we start the movie in perfect Barbie land, and every stereotypical Barbie goes through a completely normal, perfect day, and then at the end of it, doesn't satisfy her. She's like, "You guys ever think about death?"
Yeah.
And it's like, I think it tells a really great message of like perfection. Even like if you have everything you want, like it doesn't satisfy.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. And I think also talking about like thoughts that we have or worries that we have that it seems like maybe the people around us don't want us to confront or to talk about. It's kind of like breaking that happy bubble that we put around ourselves. I think Barbie world at first is seemingly like a perfect land, but underneath it's not, because it's kind of almost like a trap or a cage of like not being able to talk about things necessarily.
Yeah.
Not that the Barbies care, I guess, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like you said, it's an illusion of perfection.
Yeah, because they set that up, because even later in the movie, they recognize, like, oh, well, we have been treating the Kens terribly. Like, not every night had to be girls' night. I really wasn't thinking of you in that way. So, yeah, they do show later that, like, perfection really wasn't that perfect. It's interesting because you said it was written by Greta and by
Noah Baumbach,
her partner.
Yeah.
I'm curious how much, like, what the split was, because in this movie, and I think this was the intention and the goal.
Sure.
But it feels like they do generalize men a good bit in this movie.
I think they generalize both parties.
I agree.
But I think you kind of have to, because it's
like, for the concept of the film, like, basically all Kens and like all the men in the board and even all the men out on Santa Monica are basically evil, right? Like, very self-interested and I mean, just disgusting with how they talk with her and look at her. But then at the same time, I feel like it generalizes women a little bit in the Barbie scene of being like, all of the Barbies get like brainwashed to these men and are like, well, this is so much better than thinking for myself. Yeah. And they do some weird, they don't really explain what like the brainwashing is.
It's just like they introduce the patriarchy in Barbie world, and then the women are like, oh yeah, that's great.
Is it a critique on women as well to be like, women fall too quickly into this? Like, I'm not really sure what message they're trying to send here. But there are a lot of moments where, like, I was wondering, is this how women feel when men write them? Because this is a movie where, like, you have men that's written by a woman. Right. But throughout so much of film history, so many films, you have women that are written by men.
And even books, too, not just films.
Yeah.
Well, you know?
And a lot of times in that, like, they're either like sexualized or just the way they act isn't really how anyone would act. It's just like how you would want them to act in like a man's brain. Sure. And so this feeling this movie gave me, and maybe it was intentional, was like, is this how women feel when men write them? Because what I'm feeling right now is I'm being called evil for being a man.
Yeah, or generalized, right? Like, okay, this feels weird, right? Because we're so used to I mean, if you look at like old films, like from the 50s and 60s and all that, and it's like they're all the same. Like it's like it feels like it's like the same. Like it's not the same actors, but the way they talk and the way they do things, and I guess the men in some cases too. But it does feel very generalized and very like. Would this be true though? Yeah, that's where I'm trying to figure out what they're trying to say. Yeah. Especially with the brainwashing stuff. Of like, is this still a commentary on the real world, or was this just like a story element for the Barbie world? I don't know. Yeah. But it seems like Ken is doing the patriarchy thing because it seems like he's been neglected by Barbie. Yeah. And so it leads him to do that. So maybe if he wasn't, he wouldn't have gone to the patriarchy. Yeah, so it's an interesting.
That's the other thing is like they want you to, antagonize Ken in a way because he's being horrible, but at the same time, I really do feel for him because of how they set up, like, he's been neglected by Barbie. They have a line where it's like, I don't even know where the Kens live. I don't know if the Kens even have a house.
Do they even live? Yeah. Like,
So-
where do they live?
It's really interesting.
Yeah.
There's a lot of there is a lot of like thrown in like commentary and writing in here that really just it does feel like just more like statements. Like there's a moment like where they're in the real world and they're at a school and one of the teachers Ken's like, I don't feel anxious at all or something, and the teacher lady is like, that's because kids don't take it out on the dads. Like it was just like kind of a throwaway line, but there's a lot of little like little like injections in there.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, I guess this adds to the story a little bit, but it also feels like maybe we're just trying to put that out there.
Yeah, it's like, oh, hey, and it's really quick. Like you might miss it if you blink, but it's like just a statement that kind of comes out, and it's like, okay, well, are we applying that now to like every family, right?
Yeah.
Or again, it's generalizing everything, you know.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how they do it.
But I mean, it's all based in some sort of reality. I think it's very like over dramatized. It's dramatized for the movie, but I think all of it is based in real experiences.
Yeah, I agree. I think because of how men have treated women in the past, especially in entertainment and I guess in a business setting as well, I think that's why the Barbie movie is what it is.
Yeah.
Right? I don't think it would have been that.
I mean, and
it was done differently.
It still speaks to a lot of truth. Like, even though Equal Pay Act was passed decades ago, like that's still not really a widespread
like a reality.
thing. Yeah.
Sometimes it's just strange.
Which is crazy.
Yeah. Or the fact like of like how like a woman can be qualified for this job, but they choose the man who's a little actually underqualified.
Yeah.
Like I've heard that story before.
Or the fact that like when my sister turned 16, she got pepper spray for her birthday, and it's like that wasn't ever something I had to worry about.
Yeah.
And so that's like a real thing that there is this difference here.
Yeah.
I think we want to like relate to this movie and like the humanity of like things are broken.
Yeah.
But what this movie does is it's forcing there to be a separation between men and women. Like it can't be just like we're all humans.
Yeah.
And there are moments of that, but it is forcing us to look at each other in two different groups.
Yeah.
Which
it's like causing a divide.
I don't know.
Almost. Maybe, I mean, I was thinking maybe it was almost like the real world is like dominated by men and then Barbie land is dominated by women, and like both don't really work, right? Either one is neglected or the other one is neglected, right? And so it could be a critique on that as well. It's like we kind of need to be both together in equal say.
Yeah, we can talk about. I mean, we have to talk about America's speech. It's been pretty memed at this point. Like even the Oscars themselves, like had America do like a fake speech of being like it's impossible to host the Oscars and do like a similar thing. So I feel like at this point it's been really played. I don't know. How did you feel about it in the moment when?
I feel like it was grounded. I think like this whole movie in some sort of truth, right, of the reality of this world. I think it just felt more like we're preaching at you at this point. Like,
yes,
here's all my problems, and I'm angry.
I think they really wanted to do that because they didn't. The reason they wanted to make it so cut and dry is because they didn't want there to be any mistake of like the message.
Sure.
Go
ahead. Sorry.
I think maybe it could have been done better. I think it's really powerful, and I think America delivered it beautifully.
No, yeah, she did a great job.
And I know some of the responses we got talk about this, and are really good.
Yeah.
At the same time, I think maybe as like a storytelling element, it is really that a very preachy
a preachy tone.
moment.
I think it might actually drive at the issue of the speech is just how she's like this almost like, you know, I feels like I can't do anything, right? It's either I'm not doing it great enough or I'm being mean because I'm doing it too good. And I think maybe the speech has been mean because it's like, oh, now we got to hear about your problems or whatever. But at the same time, it's like, well, maybe that's the point, is that I can't talk about it.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why it's like that burst of like anger and frustration, which is true. And God tells us to speak honestly to him. He wants us to know our problems.
Yeah. I think in the moment, it was really powerful. I think just having like heard it over and over or like made fun of now, it's like, it's lost some of that original feeling. But I think in the moment, like even not as a woman, it was really powerful. And I know it was very powerful for a lot of people. What was I gonna? You were saying we were gonna talk about how like it applies specifically to women, but it applies a lot to like just society's standards. And I feel like in a way like not completely different issues, but I could write a similar speech about men, about standards we're held to of like, oh, well, we have to be strong, but, you know, not overbearing. You know, I want to be able to cry, but I don't want to be wimpy. Like there's different stuff where I feel like the overarching thing is like there are so many different viewpoints on like what you should do, and maybe we should not be looking to society in the first place to tell us how to be.
And that's what God does. He calls us out of that. He says, you don't have to care what they think, right? It's like, you care what I think, right? I'm the one who made you. And I think as a Christian, I've been, I think, a lot more bold and a lot more not afraid to show who I am, you know what I mean? Especially in Christ. And I think that's a message we can get out of this film is like, we have these problems because society puts these problems on us, and we take them. We're like, okay, I should listen to this because this is what people do, and I should be part of the people in this world. It's like, no, we are in this world, but we are not part of this world.
Yeah, we're in the world, but not of the world.
We're not of the world. And so God's calling us to just let those societal requirements be gone. It's like if you're following the rules of the United States while you're in like, India or something. It's like, why are you following those rules, man? You're somewhere else. So it's something to think about.
Yeah.
Something to think about.
And we have to recognize that both for the purpose of this movie and kind of the position of culture, I think this was important to hear because those issues aren't able to be vocalized as much. And for good or for bad for the story, it was vocalized and people have heard it, and that's powerful. And I will say, I think this made me think of, I was trying to think of like a good example of a way that another film was able to do this really well, but work it even better into like the story other than, we have a speech now. If you've ever seen Hidden Figures, if you haven't, just look up Hidden Figures, like speech or monologue. The way they work that monologue in there of building it up throughout the whole movie, and it expresses so much and is so powerful of like how misrepresented she was and everything she had to deal with. I think, in my personal opinion, that was more effective storytelling wise. The America's speech might have been able to get like wider across, but I think in the world it was in, like that felt like a real genuine like reaction from her.
It felt, I'd say, a lot more natural because it was kind of this tipping point of the climax of just like, I need to like say something because she's trapped essentially. And it's also based off a true story, so that's why it's probably a little more natural.
Yeah, absolutely. I think overall, I had a conversation about this. A friend asked me, because he was a parent that went in not knowing with his kids and like came out and was a little surprised. And he asked me, he was like, were you able to go in to this movie and like turn off your brain? To which I'm like, I can't do that anymore with any film. I can't turn on my brain. But specifically for this movie, like, it was clear that it was more than just the story. It had a lot to say and wanted you to leave like wrestling with something. I think the scary part of this for me is not that it's scary, but the thing is that people who don't know Jesus or don't believe in that, see a movie like this, and it has a lot of truth in it. It has a lot of just reality of what's going on in the world. Can look at a movie like this and see it as gospel rather than the gospels of like this is the picture of all social justice and like the pinnacle of like of good, you know,
because we see like we get very attached to things as humans, and we like to grab onto something and identify with something and then claim that is all true. And again, the Barbie movie talks a lot about things that are true, that are a reflection of the reality that we're in. But if we're not really looking deep into it and making sure that we're understanding every part, I think we can get not necessarily brainwashed, but we can get a little bit like believing everything that we're receiving. I mean, we see what the news does to us, right?
Yeah, I think it's important to watch this and to listen to it, to hear the realities, but then if as a Christian to submit that back under to what is God actually saying, and not being like, all right, this is gospel.
Sure. Yeah.
A couple more notes and then we'll get to our thoughts from the women. So I love I'm Just Ken. I gotta be honest, it feels so out of place.
Right, as always.
It feels so out of place for the message they were trying to get across.
Yeah.
Like that, and that's like right after America's big speech.
And that's not the moment that he realizes that he doesn't need Barbie.
Right.
It's before the moment, so it's like they added it in because it's funny and it's cool and whatnot.
Yeah, I think the explanation is that like either Ryan Gosling had the idea like on set, like they knew they wanted a dance off between the Kens, but then it turned into a bigger musical number because they wrote I'm Just Ken. It was amazing.
It was great.
But I think it kind of stole the show, and I think one of our responses kind of speaks to that. So we'll get more on that. But it's interesting. I do love I'm Just Ken.
We did sing to it while we were watching.
It's ludicrous that it won at the Golden Globes.
Yeah, did you see Ryan Gosling's reaction to that? He was like,
ludicrous.
It won?
They completely missed the point of the movie. which brings us to the heart of the movie.
Yes.
What we feel is the heart of this, and kind of what this movie really can speak to for everyone.
Yeah.
This movie is all about identity and what makes me who I am.
Yeah.
Is it that I'm a man? Is it that I'm a woman? Is it my relationship? Is it what I strive for? It all comes together in this beautiful moment and song of what was I made for.
Yeah.
I find myself like it gets caught in my head and I sing it, and it's kind of beautiful and somber. It's kind of that bitter feeling you were talking about of leaving the movie in general.
Yeah.
Of like I'm kind of sad but kind of not.
Yeah.
There's
like a hope reawakened in that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's an interesting scene because I think it could have been played off very like cliche. And I think especially that montage of all like the memories of the people who like, you know, were probably impacted by Barbie in some way. And it's in the song, of course, you know, kind of leading you through that.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and from our perspective, it's kind of very somber in a way because the question like what was I made for is really I feel it's the question that everyone asks that doesn't know Jesus. Everyone asks it at some point.
Yeah, kind of have to.
And some of us are able to find that like in Jesus. Jesus offers that answer to everyone to say, this is what I made you for. You're made to follow me, to love others, to know me and be known by me.
Be known by me, yeah. And
just the heartbreaking feeling of people going through life not knowing what they were made for. Like I don't know if Barbie knows at the end what she was made for. Right. Like I think she's asking that question and then she becomes human.
She's in the process of figuring that out.
It's kind of putting that question out to everyone of like, I used to float, now I just fall down. What was I made for?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Now I'm growing up. Things are real now.
Yeah. Like, it's almost like you've been awakened to the real world or something. It's like you can see it now.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, what do I do with this now that I have it?
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. Just like Barbie had to be awakened to what the real world is.
Yeah.
That Barbies didn't save everything.
Yeah, for women.
Now
yeah.
it's like, what was I made for? It's a great question. It's a question to bring to God, to be like, God, what was I made for?
What was I made for? Can you tell me? Because he'll tell you.
Yes.
And it may not look exactly what you think it is, but it's definitely worth it, and it's good.
Yeah.
It's
That's a very beautiful part of the movie.
Yeah.
Thank goodness that won the Oscar.
Yeah.
I love I'm Just Ken, but good grief, that was not the point of the movie. All right.
It's definitely not.
You've heard from us, but now we're going to hear some responses from the women that we reached out to.
Yeah.
Also, you all know who you are that I reached out to. Thank you so much. You did so much more than I even like asked you for. The 3 questions basically that I asked regarding Barbie was like, what are your thoughts on the movie? What messages did you take away from it? How did it make you feel? And I got back such great stuff. And this is Carlos' first time.
This is my
hearing
first time.
this,
Yeah, this is my reaction.
So, I'm gonna keep the responses anonymous.
Sure.
So I'll just say response number 1. I don't know.
Sure. And what was the question that you asked this person?
It's the same. It's all 3
okay,
questions.
All of the same. Okay.
So here we go. Here's a response from a friend of mine. I thought overall it was a very creative movie that showed a good reflection of mother-daughter love and relationship, plus the struggles some women have with the idea of getting older. However, it isn't the feminist masterpiece some people have made it out to be. And a lot of its messages came across as superficial, and it felt like they were explained when showing them was enough to get the point across. It was very on the nose with its messaging, and I hate it when movies don't let me figure it out. The end for sure got me teared up, but it was more so with the mother-daughter theming showed than the women's role in society part. It's still a good fun movie, but it is so watered down and overdone at this point for me personally to regard it as a very deep piece of work. I definitely enjoyed it, and it was super fun. So was a lot of the marketing. I just think this movie is treated like the first ones to discuss these themes. I feel like this movie is treated like it's the first one to discuss these themes when there are so many movies that have come before that have done it and done it better. I think even Greta Gerwig has done it better with Lady Bird, which expressed so many of the same exact sentiments stronger and in a way that I personally connected with more. It's kind of the easily digestible Taylor Swift-like female empowerment that is easily digestible to most demographics. That doesn't take away the importance and cultural impact it had, but more so makes me wish people watched more movies and that companies had more trust in its audience to get a message across in a way that isn't so quotable. And I also stand by Ken being the best part of the movie. And if you're trying to make a movie about female empowerment, having Ryan Gosling steal the show every scene definitely was counterproductive. But honestly, the movie would have been nothing without him. Dang.
Wow, that is some strong opinion. I mean, Ryan Gosling he's hilarious, and he does such a great job as Ken.
I did feel that, and I didn't know if it was just me, but he really does steal the show in a lot of ways. For better or for worse.
Sure.
But I do really like the point that it right now, because it's the hot topic, it's like being pushed as like the altar of all like feminism when there have been stories told. But it's good that more stories are being told. Yeah. But it's not the only one. Yeah. It's not a standalone.
And it's even interesting. We've talked about this, but I want to mention it and I'm not saying this is definitive anything. There's a joke of The Godfather of like the men being like, you don't know The Godfather. Let me tell you about it. And The Godfather is a very men-driven movie.
Yes.
But it does not glorify what the men do in that movie. And there's a scene at the very end of the first film where the main character is kind of now in this mafia role that he didn't want to be in. And I think his wife is like making some snacks or some lunch or something. And a couple of these guys in suits come in to talk to him in his office. And they start closing the door in front of her, and she's just like looking at him like, I'm not a part of this world. And I think it speaks more powerfully even because it's like
against patriarchy. Yeah. I'm sure we'll talk about Godfather eventually. Sorry.
Sorry.
But yeah, I think that's a great point of they do kind of poke fun at it. They even poke fun at Zack Snyder's
Zack Snyder's Justice League. Come on, who thought that? Is that really something that was like male driven?
I don't know. I think it's more nerd driven than anything. But
yeah, I think so.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Second response. I personally loved the Barbie movie. America Ferrera's iconic speech touched me deeply and summarized the standards women are held to. Quote, we always have to be extraordinary, but somehow we're always doing it wrong, end quote. There have been so many times in my life where I've not felt good enough. Seeing an actress portray those exact feelings made me, along with others, feel so seen unlike any other movie. I am someone who loves sentimental movies, and this movie hits close to my heart. I think they did such a good job of touching on serious issues within our society today, while also having lots of lighthearted and fun moments. It's actually interesting to me because I have noticed that when I asked my friends if they enjoyed the Barbie movie, the people that went when it first came out loved it, and the people that saw it later on didn't. I think the movie deserved all the praise it got, but it led to people having such high expectations for it. I think a lot of people expected it to be a feminist masterpiece and then felt underwhelmed. Personally, I do think this is a big step within the film industry when it comes to touching on those feminist topics on screen, but it's not the best film ever. I think it has opened the doors to lead the way of continuing this conversation within movies. Yeah.
That's true too, because like some things serve a purpose to lead to something else as well. Like John the Baptist paved the way for Jesus, but John the Baptist is not the destination, it's Jesus. Right? So John the Baptist has a purpose, and he's an imperfect guy who needs Jesus, but he paves the way for the Lord so that Jesus comes.
Ken the Baptist. John the Barbie.
Right, as always.
Sorry, that's all I got from that.
You're like running on like one brain cell, aren't you?
It's true. All right, third response.
Thoughts on the Barbie movie. Overall, a very fun, campy movie, but with a complex and appropriate message to our current world. This movie made me feel every emotion and really hit the nail on the head on what it's like to be a woman, at least in my experience. It delved into the challenges that many women face, feeling like they can't be too much of this or too much of that, and that the ideal amount of enough is an unattainable goal, at least for me growing up. It is always a struggle to be strong and driven but not bossy, to be kind, optimistic but not naive and an airhead, to be pretty feminine but not prissy. America Ferrera's monologue captured that well. Even if it was very in your face, it felt like a real rant that I've had with my friends many, many times. LOL. I also appreciated how this movie didn't fall into making a shallow take on the complex issue of the patriarchy and feminism. As a feminist who loves consuming feminist media, a lot of movies have tried to do what Barbie has done, but fell short because they didn't dig deep enough and instead gave us the 2D all men suck, we hate men takeaway. Instead of bringing us a society together to combat the societal issues that face us as women and men, it makes a lot of people turn away from the idea of feminism and claim that the patriarchy is made up. But I feel like Barbie did a really good job handling this issue, showing how the real world, patriarchal, had issues that held back Barbie/women. But also showed that Barbie Land, which was matriarchal, was also not the way to go, making the Kens and the men feel unappreciated, unloved, and like their only importance was in relation to someone else. Two sides of the same coin. The ending really did a good job having both Kens and Barbies learn from their experience and find out that the true happy world we should strive for is one where everyone is valued and appreciated. The ending with the Kens asking to be represented in government was a little funny nod to how women's rights have been slowly but surely progressing in the real world. As a Christian, I think this also emphasized that men and women are both equal and valued in the eyes of God, something that wasn't really preached until very recently, because the words of the Bible were manipulated to keep women down. Multiple mentions of women needing to submit to their husbands, being property, can't teach, etc., etc. This clearly isn't true in the eyes of God and was society's expectations of women at the time being interpreted as divine word. God cut us from the same cloth, man or woman, and we're all worthy of appreciation, love, and success. The Barbie movie emphasizes this point. The themes of community, support, and fellowship are found as well. In it, there's a lot of women supporting women and showing how we all kind of need to lean on each other and lift each other up to succeed. As someone who survived the trials of being a girl in a middle school, teenage girls can be cutthroat. It's very easy, especially
Amen.
in a society that tells us it's okay, to tear one another down in order to lift ourselves up. That's true. Like being more pretty, more funny, not like other girls type. Something I've loved that has developed in the past couple of years is our shift from being very me versus her to us supporting each other. The Barbie movie also emphasizes the importance of this for men, with the Kens competing for Barbie's attention by trying to one-up one another, the flip side of the real world, and eventually grouping together and becoming buddies and supporters of one another in the happy ending. In the Bible, community and fellowship are emphasized a lot as a true way to find salvation and joy in God. Examples are 2 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 14, Hebrews chapter 10, verses 24 to 25, 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 12 to 13. I laughed, I cried, I gasped, I felt for Barbie and her struggles and her reaction to the real world. I saw myself in America Ferrera's daughter. I wanted to call my mom and apologize and thank her. I felt inspired by the women who broke barriers for me. I wanted to hug my guy friends and tell them they were loved. I wanted to kickbox the patriarchy and anything that limited women and men. But more importantly, and more than anything, I felt hope that things are going to get better.
Wow.
That was good.
That was really good. Yeah, I really resonate with the movie. Definitely made me think about just the women in my life that have just paved the way for me in so many good ways.
Yeah.
I want to look up the references.
Yeah, the verses.
1 Corinthians 12 through 13. For just as the body is one and has many members, and all the members of the body, though many, are one body, so it is with Christ. For in one Spirit we're all baptized into one body, Jews or Greeks, slaves or free, men or women, and all were made to drink of one Spirit. I added the men or women, but that's the point. Is like the members of the body are all different, but they're all one body.
Right, exactly. And when you accept Christ, you become part of the body of Christ, which is said, like Paul says, has many members, right? And they all have different roles, but they're all in the body of Christ.
This is my body, this is my body. These two things are completely different, but they're both my body.
Yes, and they both have different roles.
Yes.
I smell with this, and I listen with this.
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
He doesn't really
Lord,
listen to me.
help me to listen.
Give
me ears to hear.
Give me ears to hear. There you go. 10. All right, Hebrews 10, 24 through 25.
Yes.
And let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near.
When he talks about the day drawing near, he means when Jesus comes back and the final judgment and all that.
But yeah, lifting each other up, stirring each other.
And then we got 2 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 14.
The grace of the Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with you all. All of us.
All.
Yes.
Not some.
Not men. All. Thank you so much for the verse references. That
was
is
great.
awesome.
Yeah.
I've got 2 more.
I'm kidding.
The women came through.
The women came through. Yeah, when he was showing me the responses, I was like, dang, they took their time with this. This is good stuff.
Yeah, great things happen when you allow a woman to speak.
Yes.
Great things come out. All right, here we go. First and foremost, I thought it was a funny movie. Everyone did great in it, and the storytelling was really good. The movie focuses on the Barbie world being this opposite reality to the one we know in our everyday lives, that women are in power and such. It's inspiring to think of what women can do if they got that opportunity to be in bigger roles. I think the movie did a great job at tackling this in a way that highlights the problems while covered up by jokes. Personally, I think that God has given both men and women specific jobs for reasons while respecting both groups. Barbie's whole thing is to inspire little girls, telling them they can grow up to be anything, and I think the movie also does a great job capturing what Barbie was meant to be in the first place. Now, the movie also tackled some areas that women do struggle with the song, What Was I Made For? As a Christian looking into this song, it kind of makes me sad to hear this because it's something a lot of people struggle with, both men and women. What was I made for? Later in the movie, one of the characters has a whole monologue of what girls do isn't enough. No matter what we do, there's no right answer. The movie doesn't go into it, but it's the same for men too. It's a joke that men don't know what women are thinking, and it's not socially acceptable to be vulnerable and have feelings or cry. And if you didn't have a job that you have to be strong for, but instead wanted to be a painter, it would be too girly. It goes both ways and loops back to, what was I made for? We all have a purpose in this world. God has a bigger plan than any of us can see, and it is so cool to be a part of that. What was I made for? I left the movie theater with that one scene in my head. Barbie was made to inspire, be a light to little girls, showing them they can do anything. And I left the movie theater with a challenge. What was I made for? I was made to be a light in the darkness. I was made to spread hope and the love of God. I was made to be an example of God's great work. That is what I was made for. And going back to the whole speech the women had, while it is true, yes, we can't ever get it right, it is also a challenge there to be different. Whatever society tells you, do the opposite. Follow God, obey Him, stand out, make heads turn your way, be brave in who you are. That, my dear sir, is how we change the world one day at a time. If you can't get it right in society, get it right with God and wholeheartedly run after Him. All in all, that is what I got out of the Barbie movie. Also, the I'm Just Ken song was so well done. I'm curious to see what you think for your perspective.
I love that. That's great.
Yeah, so good.
Whatever society says, do the opposite.
Who cares? Make heads turn.
Yeah.
That's how we change the world one day at a time.
Amazing.
It's true. We were made to be a light in the darkness, made to spread hope and the love of God, made to be an example of God's great work. So good. So good. I have one more response.
Yes.
Do you want to read it?
Sure, I'll take it away. Okay, well, I know who this is. Okay. Okay. Well, keep in mind, my perspective of Barbie comes as a Jesus-loving 40-something mom, so it may not follow other women's viewpoints. Nevertheless, here are some of my takeaways. First bullet point. Quick note. I did think the nostalgia of all of the true Barbie products was done really well. It was cool, even though I myself have never been a Barbie girl. On the whole, so much of Barbie made me deeply sad. Sad for the underlying truth of the brokenness of our world. Sad for the reality of how women have been treated for generations. Sad for the lostness of all men or women. For a movie about a toy, it was much heavier than I was expecting. One of the main takeaways I got from this movie was how titles, positions, talents, gender are your identity, and as such dictate how others are, by default, going to treat you. A question I kept coming back to was, where does my identity lie? In and of itself, that is a question humankind faces daily. But because I do look at things through the lens of Christ, the question turned into, why do I let the things of this world be the things I strive to be identified as? Does my job, my talent, my friendships make me a better, more desirable person? Do they bring me purpose? Do I find my worth solely in these things, those accomplishments, those relationships? And what happens when they go away? The theme song, What Was I Made For, just kept bringing me back to the cross. In a movie that seemed to continually ask me that question, that continually had me evaluating, where do I find my identity? As a Christ follower, I was overwhelmed by the fact that the answers to these questions kept coming back to Christ. I am His girl. It is in Him that I find my identity, my value, and my worth. What was I made for? To bring Him glory, to be loved by Him, and to pour that out, to make Him known to others. All of these thoughts flooded through with an air of thankfulness as the tears ran down the main character's face when the heaviness and brokenness of the real world fell on her heart. And as quick as these thoughts came, the sadness of the lostness of this world hit me as well, because humans long to have worth, value, purpose. But without Christ, they are left wandering, left afraid, left without hope or true purpose. They run after and strive for the affections and attention of others, like Ken to Barbie. They convince themselves that surely that person, that job, that degree, that award, that blank must be what they were purposed for. And when reality hits, like it did with Ken over Barbie, it leaves such an ache, such a void that they spiral doing anything they can to fill it. That is life without Christ, and it breaks my heart. Another takeaway, we were all looking for something to worship. In this movie, Barbie was worshipped, perfection was worshipped, titles were worshipped. For a moment, Ken was worshipped. None of those things remained what they once were, and none of those things brought fulfillment or satisfaction. We were designed to worship, but what are we choosing to worship? If it isn't Him, it is futile. If it isn't Him, it will be something else.
Yep.
Kind of like the two masters. You'll hate one or love the other.
Yeah.
Takeaway 3 was a statement I have said for years. When you look for God, you will find him. As the movie comes to a close, a few key lines were said. Humans only have one ending. The Creator doesn't control the creation. What was I made for? We have a God, an amazingly beautiful, imaginative Creator who specifically designed and created all of us. He created us, he purposed us, but he doesn't control us. We have the opportunity to make choices, to believe or not, to lean into him or not, to blank. But no matter what we choose, no matter what path we take or how we take it, you might rollerblade, I might jet ski. There is one ending coming for each of us. There is an ending, and then no other options later. We have a choice to run after Christ, and in the end, he is the only way to heaven. There isn't another option or opportunity to make that decision once the ending has come. Will we decide to be his? We won't make us. The choice is ultimately ours. He won't make us. The choice is ultimately ours. As Barbie expressed toward the end of the movie, aren't just created to be creations. He wants a relationship with us. He wants to use us and grow us. Will we let him? Finally, the speech delivered by America Ferrera is one of the deepest, most honest looks inside a woman's heart and mind that I've ever seen delivered in any medium. Every word of it I have thought and felt. Every word of it I have counseled friends through. I have used the same encouragements, cried the same conflicting tears, and felt the same utter frustration, and how I will never really measure up by any of the standards that are set out there. It is one of the most honestly beautiful monologues, but so heavy to hear, to live, and to identify with.
Let's just let that sit there for a second. That is so good.
It's good.
There's
and
so much there.
That comes from a person who's lived a pretty good amount of life, more than we've ever had.
Yeah. We're not
double the life.
We're not calling you old mom.
I didn't mean to say that's not.
He said it, not me.
No, that wasn't.
No, that was all so much better than anything we said.
Yeah.
We could just upload that, but I'm sure we won't.
Yeah.
No.
I'm sure we won't.
Thank you all again so much for that.
Thanks for sending that in.
There's so much in here to wrestle with and to take away. So much about just, I think the recurring theme, just identity. What titles mean and what those titles, where those titles put us in society.
Yeah.
But who we actually are in Christ, who we were made to be.
Yeah.
There's who society and we try to be and what we are told to be.
Right, we turn away.
And then there's who we were made to be, what I was made for.
Yeah, what was I made for?
So good.
And there's so much, it's so worth it when you know your purpose, and there's a sense of ease and the sense of, I know why I'm here.
Yeah.
But also the not fearing where you're going, after this life.
Yeah.
There's a like God says, I have plans for a hope and a future.
It's not meaningless, and it actually puts meaning into this life.
Yeah.
Because if there's nothing else, then what's the point?
Yeah.
We're just
it's all
here.
relative.
Basically, everything in this earth fades away. We're just a vapor in the wind. There's a verse.
Yeah, that is a verse.
But yeah.
That was great. Thank you for sending that in. That makes it a lot richer.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and so much more real, because we have our perspectives, but to be truthful, so much of that movie wasn't made for us. It was made for us in the sense that we need to hear it, but it really wasn't made for us.
It was, catered necessarily.
Yeah. So, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Beautiful insight. A lot to think about and take away.
Yeah.
Barbie.
Whew, what a movie, man.
Now that's a one that wasn't written by a Catholic, but
heck no.
But and yet God is there.
And yet God can show us things, and clearly affected these women. I think affected both of us while we read that. I think that was and we could connect to that on a level as well.
Yeah.
Maybe slightly different, but still connect to it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So good. What's next on the docket, Carlos?
What's next on the docket?
Episode. Do you remember?
Yeah, Shawshank Redemption.
The Shawshank. Ooh, excited.
Shawshank Redemption. If you haven't seen the Shawshank Redemption,
watch it.
Yeah, you're gonna have to if you want to watch this episode.
Yeah,
it's a great film.
Watch Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah.
In time between these episodes. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
Ready to pray us out?
Yeah, let's do it. All right. Father God, thank you that we get to enjoy this media and see your messages throughout it, that it can affect us in different ways, and that we can learn to open our ears. Even if it's not necessarily something that's been made perfectly, because nothing is besides what you have made, we can still see others in their struggle. We can see us in our struggle. We can connect to them on a deeper level, and we could come together in fellowship. So thank you for allowing us to do this, for allowing us to share these messages, and for the women who sent these messages, and for the people listening. Bless all of them, Lord, and help us to continue seeking the truth above all. In Jesus' name, amen. Love it.
Yes.
Yes. We'll see you guys next time.
We did it.
We did it.
Dude.
Hey Blondie, there's a million eyes on